Excel tips. My name is Neil Blackwood, and in this video we're going to look at Excel and the Pareto Principle. Now, the Pareto Principle is also known as the 80-20 rule and also the law of the vital few. It states that 80% of the results come from 20% of the causes or the inputs. Now, the common business example that you hear is that 80% of your sales revenue might be driven by only 20% of your clients. Now, Pareto was an Italian sociologist and economist, and he noted that 80% of Italy's land was only owned by 20% of the population. And so the 80-20 rule was born, and surprisingly it applies across many different areas like agriculture and business. Now, the idea is that if you can focus on that top 20%, you can maximize your efforts. Of course, the other side of the 80-20 rule is that 80% of your clients are only generating 20% of your revenue. So that's also worth thinking about. The Pareto Principle is based on measuring percentages, and 80 plus 20 equals 100. But that's not part of the rule, okay? So the percentages don't have to equal 100. So it doesn't have to be like 90-10 or anything like that. It could be in practice that 75% of your sales are driven by 15% of your customers. The 80 plus 20 equaling 100 is just a coincidence. Excel can perform a lot of Pareto analysis using its features and functions. One thing to think about when you are using Pareto analysis is segmentation. So rather than looking at just the totals, you might want to break it down by state, by product, by category, depending on what you're analyzing. We're going to be looking at sales data, and the table that is on the screen at the moment is going to form the basis of our examples. It's sales data with about 7,000 rows of data in there, and we're going to review this using some Pareto analysis. Initially, we're just going to look at it by client, but then we'll also look at how we can segment it by state. Now, Excel has a built-in Pareto chart, but it does require a certain layout to use it. So this is what the chart looks like. We'll build it from scratch, and I'll also show you the structure that we need. Now, it's built on this table on the left-hand side. Now, this is a list of all of the clients with the amount. Now, it's not sorted. It's just a raw list of clients, basically in sequence from the data, but the Pareto chart itself will sort it. So that's part of the built-in functionality of the chart. So I'll move this one over here, and let's build this from scratch. So I'll delete these two values. So we need a list of clients. So luckily in the subscription version of Excel, we have a function called unique, and we can get a unique list of clients. And so I'm going to go to our data. So a quick way to select a column in a table is to select any cell in that column and hold the control key and press the space bar, and that will select the column. The name of this formatted table is TBL sales. I always use a TBL prefix on my formatted tables. That is what's called a structured reference that we're seeing on the screen now. It has the name of the table and in square brackets the name of the column, which in this case is actually name. So that's it. I can just close the bracket on that and hit enter, and that gives us a list of unique names. It's in the same sequence that they appear in the data. Now from that, we want to get a listing of the amount of sales. So I'm going to use the SUMIFS function, and that will allow us to summarize the data. So I need to, the first part is the column to add up, and I'm going to use that same shortcut, control space, So we're going to be adding up the amount column, comma, when the name column, comma, and we're going to go back to our sheet and we'll click on there and press the hash key. Now the unique function spilled down, so spilling is part of dynamic arrays, which I've covered in a lot of different articles in the last few years. And to refer to a spill range, you need to use the hash symbol on the end of the reference. So when I press enter, we will also spill down to match the entries there. Now, when you navigate away from a sheet and come back to the sheet, you may notice that it puts the name here. So that's the name of this sheet, the sheet that I'm in. And that happens when you navigate away from the sheet and then come back to the sheet. So you can actually delete that. That's not required. And there we go. So that is the layout that we need. A list of names and then a list of values, basically. Okay, so I'm going to select the range and I'm going to go to Insert and Recommended Charts. And there is the Pareto chart here. So this bottom one, click that and click OK. Now, it puts it down the bottom of the list. This is the bottom of our listing. So I'm going to cut that, Control X, and I'll just paste it up the top here and then make it a bit bigger. We need to update the chart title. So I'll just call this Sales. So there we have it. So that is the Pareto chart and it lists the sales here. So that's on the left-hand axis. And this is a cumulative percentage line. So this is, as you can see, increasing fairly quickly and then it flattens out. So the idea is you need to identify where that cumulative line hits the 80%, and then the clients, in this case on the right hand side, are the ones you need to focus on. It would be really good if there was an 80% line on here, and unfortunately the built-in Pareto chart has a couple of issues. The first is there is no 80% line, and also these grid lines here are based on the left-hand axis, which is the value axis. It would be better if they were linked to the percentage axis, which is the right-hand axis. We can actually mimic this using what's called a combo chart. So let's have a look at how we can do that. Now the combo chart does require a little bit more effort. So this is the listing that we just played with on the left hand side here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to sort it. So if you are going to use a combo chart, you do need to sort the data, but that's easy because Excel has a sort function now, and here it is. So we're going to take those two spill ranges and combine them. Now if they're next to each other, all you need to do is put the colon between those two references with the hash symbol. That reference there is going to create a single range that you can then sort. So it's going to be a single spill range. So you're basically combining the two separate spill ranges together. Comma 2 means you want to sort by the second column in this range, and the -1 on the end means you want to sort in descending order. Okay, so highest to lowest, and that's what it's done. So that is a spill range that is spilling down. It's also a two-dimensional spill range. These were single dimension, so we're spilling down. This one spills across because it's got two columns, because we combined these. Okay, so that is the spill range creating our raw data. So it's sorted. Then we need to figure out the percentage. So we can use the index function here to identify the second column. So we're taking our spill range. We don't need the second argument. We're using the third argument to basically extract the second column from our spill range because that has the value in it. And then we're dividing that by what that adds up to. So this gives us the percentage all the way down to the bottom. that's not the important bit for us. For a Pareto chart, you need to calculate the cumulative percentage. And so to do that, we need to add that up. And so this scan function will allow us to do this. So I have covered this in a previous article. Basically, the scan function has an initial value, the range you want to sort of summarize, so that's column F, and then what you want to do with it with this lambda. So basically the initial value goes into X, the value from the listing goes into Y, and you add them up. As it goes down the table, the X plus Y gets put back into X. And so what it does is it gives you a cumulative percentage. And then this one here is just to give us our 80% line. So I've just put a formula here that will give us just the value of 80% for every line. And we're going to use that to create this blue line here. Okay, so that's all of the information we need. Now we don't need column F, so I'm going to hide that. Now when you hide a column, it is hidden from the chart as well. So let's move this chart over. Oh, by the way, that's the chart that we're going to build. We've got the right hand axis that's giving us our percentage here. That's the green line. The blue line, light blue line, is giving us our 80%, and then the column chart is giving us our values, and that's the left hand axis there. Okay, so let's build that. To create the combo chart, we need to select the range first. So I'm just going to select the name across to the 80%. To select the whole table, just press Control, Shift, and the down arrow, and that selects that table. And then we're going to go Insert, Recommended Charts. So I'm going to click on All Charts and the Combo, and then click on that very first one. Series 1, don't need to change. Series 3, I need to change that to a line chart. And series 3 and 4, I need to make sure that they're both on the secondary axis. So those tick boxes, as you can see, it's giving you a display of what it's going to look like. So click OK. As happened before, it puts the chart at the bottom, so let's move it to the top. So Control X to cut it, and Control V to paste it. And we can tweak the chart. So let's make it a bit bigger. I'll get rid of the legend so I can delete that. I'm going to get rid of the grid lines, delete that. Now we need to modify the columns. I'm just going to click on that. If this on the right hand side isn't visible, then you can right click and format the data series, and that will also show it. We need to click the last little icon here, and we're going to change that to 0 and change this to about 20%. And so there we go. So that gives us the chart structure that we're after. One of the problems we've got is that this axis is going to 120%. So I'm going to edit that and the axis options and just change that to a 1, which gives us the 100%, which is what we're after. The last thing we need to do is to add in the grid lines for the right hand axis. So I'm going to right click on the axis and choose Add Major Grid Lines. And there we go. We can see the 80% one is on there. I'll change the chart title and just make that Sales. And that's it. So that's our combo chart that looks like a Pareto chart. It has the grid lines on the percentages, and it has the 80% line going across as well. The next thing you might want to consider is using pivot tables. Pivot tables have some Pareto analysis built into them as well, and you can use pivot tables to summarize the data. Unfortunately, pivot tables can't be a data source for a Pareto chart, but it can be a report that you can identify pretty quickly where the 80% is. Okay, so let's create a pivot chart from this data source. Highly recommend that you use formatted tables as a data source for pivot tables. Lots of advantages with doing that. Okay, so insert pivot table. I'll do it on a new worksheet, and we will create a customer. So that's the name, that's going to be in the row, and I'm going to put the amount in the values. So there's the raw amount. So something that's changed recently in Excel is the fact that the format from the data flows into the format from the pivot table. So in the olden days, which was a few months ago, these would not have any format on them. But now, because the data is formatted, the pivot table is formatted. So that's a really good addition to pivot tables. That's fairly recent. We can modify this so that we can get a listing sorted. So we can right click and we can sort in largest to smallest. And so that gives us our sorted list automatically. Something that isn't on here is the percentage. So adding it in isn't intuitive. What I'm going to do is I'm going to drag the amount column to the values section again. There we go. And if you right click that second column, you can click on show values as. You can then click on the percentage running total. And it's going to be based on name. And there we go. So that's automatically giving us our percentage. So we can see that the 80% kicks in down around here. Because we're starting on sort of on row 4, you might want a ranking in here. So we can do that again. We can drag that amount column here and we can right click and show values as again. And this time we can do rank, largest to smallest. And again, based on name. And there we go. So that's our ranking first through, I think there's 100 and odd, there's 105. 21 would be our 20%. So you can see that 21 is giving us 76 odd percent of sales there. So you can see that the pivot tables allow you to list the entries in sequence and also add that percentage. Something else you can do is you can filter. So if you filter the list, so I'm going to click here and go for a value filter. There's something called top 10. Now, it's not just top 10. If you click it, you'll see the ability to go top or bottom. So again, depending on the analysis that you're doing, you might want to look at the bottom certain percent. But in this case, I want the top 80% of by sum of amount. So this is going to amend the table so that we only see the top 80%, which was down to that Firestone Finance. And so we don't probably need these. So you could remove those from the table, just drag them out. And there we go. And that's using the top 10 option, which is actually top or bottom, and the 10 can be 10 items or it can be 10%. So it's fairly flexible there. Now, something to consider that I mentioned earlier is segmentation. In Excel, that's basically called filtering, and so you might want to filter by this. Let's actually undo a few things here. There we go. So we're back to where we were. Let's say we wanted to filter this by state. Now, Excel has something called a slicer in pivot tables and also formatted tables. So a slicer is a filter. And if we click the state field here, we have the ability now to perform our same analysis by state. So in the state, we only had, say, 17 different clients, and we can see that the top 4 here give us almost 71% of our sales. But this is a really easy way that you can look at each state in isolation and see if they have that 80%. In this case, you can see that 3 clients equal the 80% of sales. Okay, so in terms of segmentation, we can even do that with our combo chart. Okay, here we go. I've got the state in cell A1. So this is summarizing sales by just the state. So in the data set, only certain clients were in a state. So the clients didn't buy across states. So each state had their sort of set clients, if you like. The formula in cell A3 has been updated to allow us to segment the data by state. The previous function referred to the TBL sales name, but we can replace that with the filter function. So we're filtering the name when the state column equals A1. So by having this inside the unique parentheses, we get a unique list of WA clients. And then our formula over here works the same. It is then summarizing this list and sorting it. So the last feature I wanted to share is conditional formatting. On the home ribbon, the conditional formatting drop-down has a top and bottom rules. So this is similar to the top 10 filter options in pivot tables, where you can select top 10 items or a top 10%. And again, there's bottom as well, bottom 10. And these are not limited to 10. You can change the value. You can use this conditional format to highlight only those cells that contain the top 10 or top 80%. I did do an article a few months back on using this feature, as well as how you can actually put some interaction there. These options allow you to enter in the percentage that you want to work with, but it doesn't allow you to link back to the spreadsheet. So in the previous article, I showed you how to do that. Okay, so as you've seen, there's lots of different features in Excel that you can use to perform Pareto analysis, and that can help you identify the areas that you need to focus on, and just as importantly, the areas you don't need to focus on. I hope you found that useful. Thanks for watching.